How's it going, everyone? My name is Mike Rahm with Landmark Commercial Realty, Director of Valuation Advisory and Senior Associate here. We're going to start a series where we highlight an industry professional, most likely in the real estate industry. We're going to sprinkle in some of our brokers. We really want to educate, network, and create some opportunities for the viewers to learn a little bit more about, our community and the people that serve it. So, with that being said, today I have a good friend of mine, Bill Sutton with Mowery Construction. And Bill has been an absolute mentor for me. I love that we're kind of here today just for me to be able to give you your flowers and just to tell you like how much of a mentor you've been for me. Wow. Like when I started my company 3 years ago, I should also mention that president and owner of Commonwealth Commercial Appraisal Group. But when I started my company 3 years ago or so, you were like the first person that helped me out. You're always the first person that I ask advice of. You're super active in the community. You're a mentor for me in many ways. So I am honored when we started to think about what this series might look like. You were the first person that came to mind. Wow. So I am so pumped that you're here. Thanks for all you do for me and for the community. But yeah, with that being said, I know you're super involved with a bunch of different things. People probably see you everywhere. And what are some of those things? Let's start with Mowery and then maybe talk a little bit about all the other boards that you're involved in.
Sure, great. Thanks for having me. First and foremost, thank you for the shout out. I mean, you and I think from day one we hit it off, and we're super passionate about what we do. And when you surround yourself with people who are passionate and want to do good work, like I can't help but want to support them. So, and you've always been one of those guys, and no matter what you do, you're going to be successful. So, hey, at Mowery, we have a really, really great company. I mean, we've been around since 1925. I've been fortunate. I came to Mowery as a project manager, which was my kind of career first love. Love building buildings, and I love people. I love working with people. And so as my career evolved, I got more in front of the clients and helping understand what they were trying to accomplish. And I became, in business development, a vice president of business development, which evolved into the VP of customer experience, which at that time was somewhat new, but understanding, what it's like for a developer who, is always looking to do it better and faster and, understand all the different variables that come into a deal, right? Yeah. And the construction, I've always been, hey, we're more than the guys that just, put bricks and mortar together, right? We need to understand.
And you have to now, right?
Yeah, you have to, right? And at least if we want to be ahead of the curve and ahead of the competition, right? We want to understand it as well as they do. We want to understand, even if it's a little edge that we can bring to making the deal better or saving them a little bit of money or get them in a month earlier, like that's what we're trying to do. We feel like that experience is what separates us. So, my new role is Chief Strategy Officer, which
was like 2 months ago, right?
Yeah, a couple months ago. Yeah. And again, we have new ownership. Seth Hughes, great guy. He's been in construction his whole life. If you look at our last 5 years, we've doubled as a company, right? So that's really great growth. And really, my role is how do we sustain that growth through the ups and downs of different markets, and I think we'll talk about that today. So, Seth really is leaning on me to really navigate that, help him navigate that, give him input on, what the clients need, what different markets need, where we should be going in the future, right? Because we're almost 100 years old. What is the next 100 years going to bring for us, and how do we set us up for success? So, love it. Every day is something new, and
especially now, right?
Especially right now.
I think there's something new for everybody every day at this point, but especially in construction.
Especially in construction. Yeah, I mean, the real estate world, construction, the financial world right now. I mean, over the last 3 years, we've learned. Every day is something new.
The word volatile is in my vocabulary every 30 minutes, it seems like.
Yep, and it's still changing. So, that's the Mowery side. I serve on several boards. You know?
And I wanted
Yeah.
to talk about that a little bit because I think one of the things that brings us together is golf, right?
Yeah.
And I think most recently,
Yeah.
you actually asked me to, well, and I am on the board for the Ronald McDonald Golf Tournament or whatever. You chaired that last year.
Yeah.
Among, you're involved in the Urban Land Institute. You got me involved in that. I think I'll probably be a little bit more involved in that next year. What are some of the other things that you're doing?
Dauphin County Library System, which my good friend Andy Enders got me involved in. But the more that I've served on the library board, the more I see the overlap in our communities and our population and the services that we can and provide to all different types of people in that walk of life. So I've been serving on the library board like through COVID, like where services had to get shut down because people couldn't come in, and then how do we provide a community space for people of all backgrounds to come and learn and grow and have resources. And
so it's not just books.
No, it's not just books, and
that's what a lot of people think, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to be a visionary. So like we're talking about Mowery in the next 100 years. Like when I work on the library board, I'm thinking about what's a library look like for the next 100 years, and that's really cool to me. Like. So, we put in a new STEM space downtown for kids that have robotics and augmented reality and a 3D printer and space that they can, make things. Like a library 50 years ago didn't have that, right?
Is that at all in conjunction with Harrisburg U, or is that sort of separate? Because I know you're involved in Harrisburg U as well.
Yeah. Harrisburg U is definitely a part in that. We're deepening our partnership there. Okay. But it's just crazy how there's certain organizations and certain people that just multiple layers overlap, and I love solving multiple challenges like with one solution. So and the library is one of those things.
Well, I might piss off Seth Hughes a little bit with this comment, but I've always told you you'd be a really good real estate broker because you are really good at connecting those dots and connecting people and just connecting things. So anyways,
well, who knows? I'm still young. I mean, at some point, at some point maybe I will. But I learned a lot from you. I mean, I think your way to write and share and explain things in the real estate business has helped me tremendously. Like I have an engineering background. Okay. I didn't understand the business side or the real estate side of things, and just in the last few years it's been something I've been trying to learn.
Wow,
so.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Hopefully we continue on that path. With that being said, we're going to jump into some questions here. Related to the construction industry, talk about some of the trends that are going on, and what might be in store for the future.
Sure.
So get out your crystal ball, right? So in 2021 and 2022, we already talked about it. How much volatility there had been. The things that I've heard was steel and lumber. Yep. I'm sure, anybody out there in the construction industry, has other materials that they're aware of that have been fluctuating dramatically as well. But anyways, those are the two that I've heard. And so what's the status of those specific materials or just overall construction cost inflation? How has that been trending, and sort of what do you anticipate for 23?
Sure. So we started tracking this last year because of the volatility. And because of kind of my role, I wanted to be able to inform clients kind of real time what was happening in the market. So just to give you a sense, we probably price up anywhere between 5 and 10 projects a month. Okay. So I was able to use that data. I have about 6 materials that are major drivers on a project. You named a couple: steel, wood. I would add concrete. I would add roofing. And then I kind of lump in together mechanical, electrical, plumbing equipment into one, just to simplify it because it can vary widely. But as I track those drivers on major projects, we peaked in July of 22.
Okay.
Pricing. So it was important for me to have a sense of, and for every client, they're trying to decide when is the optimum time to buy and to build, right?
Sure.
And if they're seeing trends go down on pricing, they technically don't want to buy right now if in a month or two the price is going to be down 10%, right? Yeah. So part of my job has become, hey, let's look at that, let's forecast that. So the trends from July to now have been down for all of those items, with the exception of one, which is concrete. Okay. And so concrete, and it's funny, I talked to some people in the cement business, because I'm just a curious person. I'm like, what is driving this, right? And
that was going to be my question, so thank you.
Yeah, so what drives this, and it's the cost to mine and source cement. There's a lot of drivers involved. The cost to truck it, the energy costs being up, the shortage in labor, all those things add up, and that is a limited resource that we have, cement.
Sure. And
so that's driving that. Whereas we saw a relief in the pipeline for a lot of these materials, roofing, steel. We had a bottleneck coming out of COVID, pushed up supply, pushed up demand. The supply couldn't keep up. And then once the demand let up, that's when the prices came down.
So when you're talking about rapid price appreciation in concrete, for instance, my mind goes to, what are the alternatives, or are there alternatives?
Sure.
And so, what are some of those discussions looking like? Are there alternatives for concrete? Does technology need to increase to the point where, that kind of thing is safe, or what, right? Take it any direction.
So it's a great question. Yeah. So just to talk about how real this challenge is, in last year, there was, so we build big distribution centers, and there was only so many batch plants pushing out concrete on the East Coast, right? And there was a mad dash to get your hands on, these on-site batch plants where you can make your concrete. There really isn't another way to build these big warehouses with the slabs. So a slab is probably the most important thing. It's got to be completely flat, can't move. Right. There's really just not another product like concrete that's going to make that happen and make it withstand many years. I went to engineering school, 20, 25 years ago, and I was thinking back then, there has to be a better way, right? Polymers, and I just have always thought like this, and we just haven't evolved. Now, steel, we found when steel got delayed, we found some different ways with pre-engineered systems where we were able to get away from joist and deck. We got to some different systems, which was cool. And we've also found with other materials that you could pivot, but there's not a lot. Roofing is roofing when you're dealing with these big buildings, and we kind of became dependent on whatever they said to us. If it was 12 months, you had 12 months. So my advice to our clients was, hey, you have to start planning sooner. We got used to January. Picking a project going, right, and you could start in April. Well, that's not the case anymore. You're not going to be done in 10 or 12 months. You have to plan about 6 months ahead of where you would normally plan.
And this is why, we talk a lot offline, but this is why you're pretty intimately involved in the site selection process as well, right? Because your time starts when they get that thing under contract, right? Or something to that effect.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And so it's funny. I always want to introduce Mowery the earliest in the developer's process. Right. So the second that they think about that piece of land, we're able to help them. We want to look at the site with them. We want to look at access, stormwater concerns, the environmental concerns. How big of a building could they fit on that piece of land? Yeah. What does the parking situation look like? So
what do you need brokers for?
Well, again, we work hand in hand, right?
No,
and you guys know about it before we do. But at least what we can do is offer up, support, and then those real-time costs, right? So they put their pro formas together. Right. One of the bigger items in there is, what's the construction going to run me? Right. And right now, month to month, we're seeing improvements in that, anywhere from 5 to 10% in certain areas, which is really great.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to talk about it. But the cost to borrow, really
take it. That is one of the questions we have on here. But I'll just sort of give the context a little bit. But in my world, you're seeing a lot of the developers hit the pause button because what we call financial feasibility, right? Your costs exceed the value of the property, of the building once it's complete, right? And you know, the ability to anticipate where interest rates will be or what values will be in 6 to 12 months is just, it's like throwing a dart, you know, at this point. We should have probably anticipated that rates would go up. We just didn't realize how quickly they would,
Yes.
right? I think that's really the issue at hand. What are you sort of seeing in terms of how certain submarkets are affected? What property types are affected more?
Sure.
What's the word on the street with how people are handling, you know, the issue of financial feasibility?
Sure. I mean, what became so strong for us in the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years was the industrial warehouse boom. Just based on proximity, based on our experience. We've been doing it for 40 years in Carlisle. Like we know that product better than anybody, I think. And it was like in July when construction spiked, and we almost doubled the cost of a warehouse, right?
Jeez.
And they said, okay, between that and the cost of borrow going up, it really didn't make sense anymore to build on spec.
Right.
Because they had to invest so much. And we have seen a slowdown in the adoption rate. Now, the vacancy rate is low, which is great. Everybody says, hey, we could keep doing this because the vacancy rate's low. But I talked to brokers, and the tenant activity for really big boxes right now, it's not there.
Yeah.
And now and I asked the question, why is that? And so the feedback that I got was, it's actually pretty cost intensive for someone to move into one of those boxes. And so the cost to borrow is impacting the tenants as well, that they're pushing pause on making any big moves into new spaces because it's cost intensive for them as well.
Okay.
So at least that's the feedback that I got. But so again, warehousing, spec, very limited projects moving forward right now. Almost every developer I talk to is pushed to 24. So any major project for the most part, if they haven't, you know, locked up financing kind of first half of last year, they're into 24. You know, we have served about 8 major verticals through the years. So the ones that are really surging, which is great for us, is healthcare, senior living. You know, we live in just a prime area for that growth, and that's the major growth population for us. We've seen a tremendous surge in higher education, which I find to be pretty unique. Institutional money, they don't need to borrow. They have older campuses around here. Right. They want to attract students, so they're kind of reinvesting into their campuses.
What are you seeing in terms of capital projects? Like, what type of projects are they pursuing? Is it just like renovation of old buildings, or is it
a lot of that? Dorm upgrades. So the kids that are going to college right now, they want to have nice amenities. Right. So they're investing in dorms, upgrading dorms. The life sciences.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a buzzword right now.
Huge one. Yeah. And you'll see it more in the major metropolitan areas, like Pittsburgh, you know, Philly,
a big one.
DC, Baltimore, where you have research at the higher ed level and you have medical, and they're merging.
And I've also heard that you have to be like close to airports and whatnot to transport the, I don't know, whatever they're transporting.
Well, sure. Yeah. There's that, and then there's just the if you look at the money that gets invested in research, you know, Central PA is not known for that, right? You got to kind of go to those major cities, but life sciences coupled with higher ed and you know, corporate. It's funny, corporate is not necessarily down. I see people looking at a corporate workplace in a different light now.
Yes.
Which is great. I mean, we just built Members First new headquarters, which was a fantastic project for them. It was kind of planned before COVID, moved in after COVID, but their vision for the space was to be a flexible, fun, really nice workspace.
So that didn't change.
It didn't.
It
didn't. And it's funny how many people, like, if you build a really fun workspace, how many people want to come to work?
Every time I'm there, the parking lot is full as hell.
People love it.
I'm shocked.
I know. I'm not because I've worked at places like that, and like, it's
I mean,
one
it
of
is
those
gorgeous,
things.
by the way. Yeah, well done.
Yeah. And it's an atmosphere, and it's part of the culture.
It's cool.
And and that's the thing we struggled with COVID was when you're at home and you're on Zoom and you're not connected to your team, you lose that culture a little bit.
Right.
So
right. It's like you could save money on rent, but you might lose that on the back end with employee morale. I know that's like sort of what people are balancing right now. And, you know, a lot of people are locked into leases that, you know, will continue to expire over the next however many years. And then, you know, so companies throughout the next few years will be making those decisions sort of on a staggered basis. It's not as easy as this is our culture, you know, we're going to leave our 20,000 square foot space today, because you still might have, you know, 5-year lease outstanding. But as those leases, you know, are due and whatnot, we'll see maybe more of that, or just like a reimagined space, right? You might not actually leave. You might just, you know, I've heard the idea of maybe you need 300 square feet per employee before. Now you might need 500 square feet just because of the amenities and whatnot that might be necessary to draw them into the office.
Yeah.
So there might be less people, and they might not be there for 5 days a week, but still need the space, right?
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally. And it's funny, like Rite Aid built their place down at the Navy Yard, and it's totally elective to go in there for every employee, right? They're 100% remote. So they just make it a resource for people to come in and collaborate or meet or get out of the home. Like, it's funny, like there's time where I just need to get out of the house, like, and have somewhere to work with people. So.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
The last thing that we have here is, and you hit it on it with sort of the first answer regarding construction cost inflation, but it's labor and sort of, you know, how that's affecting costs, what the future of that is. How does technology play a role in it? How are you attracting people to Mowery as opposed to, you know, whether or not they might be going into another trade or whatever it might be? How does the role of a labor shortage affect what you're doing? And maybe I should caveat this as well. Is there really a labor shortage right now because of the fact that there's not as much demand? Sure. And talk about how maybe those two things are related. Sure,
it's a big question. It's something that honestly, I've been in this business 20 years. I've heard about for 20 years. We have a generational gap where we didn't promote to our children to go into the trades. Okay. For about 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
It wasn't cool.
It wasn't cool.
You needed to go to college, right? And we all know that there's certain people that are not geared to go to college. Right. And they come out, they got a degree, they don't love it, you know, they don't, and then they think, well, why did I do this? It was just, it became a prerequisite to get into the workforce that you had to go to college, right? So I think what we've done and what I've done for 20 years is on the grassroots effort to promote the trades. You have to start young. I have a nonprofit called Future City Program, which teaches kids about what it's like to be an architect, engineer, or contractor, right? And build cities, right? So cool. Oh yeah. So, but like they're middle school. You have to start teaching children. If you wanna build things and you wanna be a welder or a carpenter, that's cool. You can make a great life. Like you have to start there, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to work the grassroots, okay? Now, what I am seeing is it's a concern. It is a concern because of the retirement of, you know, these, you know, 60-year-old, 70-year-old,
knowledge,
yes,
right,
that have been doing construction for 40 years.
Right.
They're irreplaceable. And so what are we doing? You know, we're trying to recruit kids out of trade schools. We're trying to recruit kids out of college that may prefer working in the field versus being in the office and training that way. But yes, we're seeing a slight relief on the labor demand because this year projects are down, but that's very temporary.
Right.
Okay. I mean, when we move forward, it's going to be a major concern. So I have seen, look, this area, especially between CADIC and CREDIC, the workforce development work that we're doing and the investment into trades is significant. And we've done great work. It's just, is it enough? That's the question. And so, you know, actually what I've been thinking about is, what are the solutions? Tech is definitely one. Robotics, automation. And then if I think about, I looked up a stat, 73 million jobs right now can be done by a robot or an automated process. So that means and most of them are in the manufacturing realm.
Okay.
So that's concerning for the people who have that jobs right now. But what I envision is a repurposing of those workers that are in those fields to the construction field.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? And same can be said for mechanics. So as we make an evolution from gas-fired vehicles to electric vehicles, there's less maintenance involved in an electric vehicle. There's less moving parts, you don't have to service it, you don't have to change the oil, Yeah. Well, there's going to be a lot of mechanics that are out of work. And can they be repurposed into the construction field? Mm-hmm. Because to build a building, as we stand right now, there's no foreseeable future where that's done autonomously by a robot.
Or at least cost effectively.
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
So, there's things out there, the 3D printer that prints a house and things like that, but we're far from that. But so you have to think about it like that there will be certain industries that labor will be made available, and how can we capitalize on those shifts?
Yeah.
But also just working on grassroots training and promotion, and so.
Yeah, good enough. Is there anything else that you want to add before we conclude? I especially want to give you the floor to let people know how to get a hold of you. Mm-hmm. Email, phone number, whatever you want to throw out there.
Sure.
To people. But yeah, any interesting projects that you're working on or anything like that?
There are some cool projects. So certainly have seen a surge in manufacturing coming back to the United States.
Okay.
And I think that is a direct correlation from COVID and from our dependency on foreign goods.
Right, with the ships and stuff like
correct.
that, right?
I mean, ships, raw materials, this, that, and the other thing. We learned, hey, we can't be that dependent on other people. We have to bring that stuff back. So we're seeing a big time surge in that. It makes us more competitive. If it's a problem to bring it in, it costs more, it takes more time, it starts to make us more competitive to make it here.
Yeah.
So we've done a lot in that space. A lot in the food and beverage space right now is surging to make that more efficient.
And we're talking about like cold storage type of stuff, or?
Well, both processing,
Oh, manufacturing. We're still in that. Okay,
yeah, we're still processing, but also the cold storage. There's a huge demand right now for that.
Okay.
Because I think we're seeing a shift in a lot of different areas to direct to consumer food and beverage, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Get my meals, on the front porch.
HelloFresh.
Every week,
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's a cool one. I'll say, look, the electric vehicle wave for us is kind of big. So we've been doing electric vehicles as charging stations as we build auto dealerships. For the last, we do a lot of auto dealerships. We've been doing them for like the last 5-10 years. And so the infrastructure is, if it needs to be at 100, it's at like 5 right now.
For electric vehicles?
Correct.
Okay.
So every single person, every single business I talk to, they want to have an electric vehicle charging station at their place of business or at their commercial place. So we created a division that we have our own electricians, we have our own engineers, we have our own vendors that supply it, and we're doing that now. So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So there's little things like that. We also started an IT company because every project that we do and every client we serve and every subcontractor, they do see what we've done with technology, and they're like, can you guys help us do that? So we brought in a couple guys, we started an IT company, and we're like, that's just a shoulder business that we could do. So thinking more kind of vertically, like how can we,
Yes.
what are shoulder services that we can provide that we're really good at, that aren't typical, like we're starting to do that. So
Awesome.
yeah, it's pretty
Awesome.
neat.
Email, phone number?
Oh yeah, wsutton@rsmowery.com. super active on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
just trying to spread positivity. And
You know I am.
yeah,
This will probably be on LinkedIn too.
this is great,
Awesome.
man.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you so much. I'm sure I'll see you on the links pretty soon. Maybe not on the same fairway, but but we'll be out there soon, or at the very least at a networking event. So yeah,
For sure.
thanks so much for sitting down with me today, and we'll talk soon.
Great. Thanks,
All right,
Mike.
Cool.